Welcome back to the Pop Astrologist Presents. In case you are new here, my name is Tasha and I am at the Pop Astrologist on social media. And we're going to do things a little differently this week. Normally, you know us for our deep dives where pop culture and astrology align, but I thought it'd be interesting to maybe flip the script on its head a little bit, try to maybe center events around transits. And this week, we had such a phenomenal transit in the sky. We had Venus and Jupiter in Cancer. A lot of astrologers have talked about how this is such an amazing, benefic, beautiful, abundant transit. And sure, all those things, but clearly, as we've seen with the events from the week, there have been some highs and lows. And so, here to talk with me about those highs and lows, we have the lovely William. Hi, William.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here and especially to be talking about what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, one, we'll have to say I loved our conversation. I was on William's podcast, Orbitals, talking about, the Mormon Church and Salt Lake City. And, having had so much fun having that conversation, I thought, who would I want to break down this pretty important, pretty significant week in, I guess, US history? Because Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, again, this one was particularly important for the United States. And so, what we're going to be doing in today's episode is breaking down the transit, breaking down the United States Sibley, how that is coming out, with Trump policies this week, with Kim Davis this week, with Taylor Swift this week. So, really here to explore the highs and the lows of how a transit can manifest. Now, William, before we dive deeper into the heart of our conversation, can you let people know what your big three are, i.e., what your biases are, political and or otherwise? Because I do think it is really important that folks understand sort of where their astrologers stand on certain matters.
Oh, totally. Well, I'm a Virgo sun, Taurus rising, Scorpio moon,
We love the
and
Scorpio.
yeah, I've got a Scorpio stellium, got my Mars in Scorpio too.
Oh, you and Taylor Swift, not the
Oh,
stallion, but the
that's right.
Mars in
The
Scorpio.
Mars and Scorpio. I love a Mars and Scorpio, but yeah, politically, I mean, I'm pretty left. Yeah, I mean, as left as you can get.
It is
And
kind of hard to deduce these days because I do
it
think that,
is.
if you consider yourself left, like how left are you? Same with the right, are you like all the way? So we are in a new paradigm, right? We are in the Uranus and Gemini paradigm. So it kind of would make sense that everything is getting jumbled up, how you view yourself, how you view your allegiances to your party. People are literally trying to like Cuomo, for example, in New York, right? Like all of a sudden it's like I might not run as a Democrat, I might run as an independent. Like everything is kind of up in the air right now.
Very true.
It has been a hot summer. This has been a Mercury retrograde summer to
Yeah.
remember. And when you think about this week, we had Mercury finally stationed direct early this week,
Yeah.
August 11th, right? August 11th,
Yeah. It
yes.
was so loud. This was like the loudest Mercury retrograde I can remember in a long time.
Yeah, in Leo, it makes a lot of sense. And again, a lot of astrologers, I think, like to do the, look aheads, and like, what do we can we anticipate from this transit? And, I'm personally more interested in, so what's happened since that transit just happened? Like, let's really like understand the impact because when Venus and Jupiter come together in Cancer, they came together the day that Mercury stationed direct. And when you think about Mercury as the celestial microphone, what is the message being articulated this week? And because Venus and Jupiter only meet once every 12 years in Cancer, specifically, what does this say really about this next 12-year cycle also? So maybe let's start from there, just breaking down Venus and Jupiter in Cancer together. Like what is your take on that? How would you interpret that? What would you say to a client coming to you, putting those two together?
Well, I think a transit like that, this is a really good example of one that, you see a lot of astrologers being like, oh, it's the luckiest transit of the, I mean, I don't know how many times I heard that something was the luckiest transit of the year, but this is one of them that's been, and sure, yeah. I mean, if you're getting directly hit by this Jupiter Venus conjunction, then yeah, I mean, then yeah, you're feeling it in a probably very positive way. I
Hmm.
think that the mundane astrology just works a little different. And
Hmm.
we have to like, this is where politics come in. yes, a lot of astrologers tend to lean on the liberal side, and so collectively we often are like, oh, this is gonna be really good for like society and all this stuff, but like Cancer energy is very protective. I mean, we always have to come back to that crab. Like
Mm-hmm.
Cancer, especially when you get that combination, Venus and Jupiter, take Cancer out of it. I think of like alliances. I think of like coming
Mm-hmm.
together for a common cause. And whatever that is, it might be a cause that you align with or not, but there's enough people that are all on the same page and they feel passionately about something. So
Mm-hmm.
you can see a lot of that. And we saw like gay marriage being up for
Questioned this
debate
week.
again, right? Which I think we went from the beginning of the week being like, all right, we're fine, this is insane, to the end of the week being like, actually, no, we're probably, this is what's going to happen.
And
Very likely,
you know,
right?
honestly, that's kind of what, like, two things came to mind as you were talking. One, that was really the big impetus for the episode this week, the idea that Kim Davis, and we'll get into this in a second if you're not necessarily familiar with the history or who she is or why this moment is particularly important and why we should be taking this a lot more seriously than maybe some legal experts might be suggesting. Um, you know, when you look at her charts, and we'll pull that up a second, it's quite striking. But then the other thing about this week was I had posted something about how astrology is political. And what you just said about how, there are a lot of astrologers who tend to lean more progressive, I found out this week, or I came into contact maybe with like that QAnon right-wing alt-right pipeline, brand of astrology. And all to say is no astrology, like you can't assume anything about your astrologer. When I think about Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, naturally something that comes to mind is fertility because Cancer and motherhood, it makes a lot of sense, right? That there is such a rise of trad wives, rise of, all this energy in the air around motherhood. Like you hear so many people are getting pregnant. Like I cover pop culture, every other celebrity is like announcing or is pregnant or had a child in secret or something. Like it is very much in the air. So you can't deny that aspect. But what was so striking was, I was interpreting it as, oh, the Trump administration is about to burn about $10 million worth of birth control in
Oh, crap.
Belgium, which is wild. And, you know, when you think about it, it's like, oh, it kind of makes sense. In the United States, this is a big moment for the United States. There's Saturn in Libra at the same degree, so there's a restriction. And this person had commented, well, actually, the way I view it is Jupiter and Venus bring about love and fertility, and Saturn is like sterilization. And so this is helping free women from the sterilization because children are beautiful. And, while I have like a Libra 12th house, so sometimes I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying with the interpretation. It's kind of like when a teacher is grading an assignment, you're like, technically you interpreted that
Yeah,
sure within the guidelines, but
you're a little off.
words do not mean truth. And this is also something super important with Uranus and Gemini. People can say a whole lot of stuff, but does that speak to your brand of truth?
Hmm.
A little bit of a different story. So let me actually pull up the United States chart because I do think that the reason why I keep bringing up and emphasizing this Venus and Jupiter transit is because take a look at, and I'm just going to pull it up to early this week. Take a look at the United States sun, right? So this Venus and Jupiter conjunction was at 13 degrees, and that happened to be right on the United States Cancer sun. So when you think about a seeding point, a very fertile seeding point,
Yeah.
I remember telling my clients this week, like, just pay attention to like what you're doing this week, what you're thinking this week. Take those little small steps in the direction of what it is you want, right? Like if you've got debt,
Yeah.
like maybe like try to create a debt plan or something, right? We're not saying that the material has to change immediately, but the inner world and the intentions are taking precedent right now. But where I think we can understand why it might not be so abundant for the United States or why it might seem a little more onerous for the United States is literally because of this square, in my humble
Hmm.
opinion, like Saturn in Libra, an exalted Saturn in Libra. And again, you think exalted planet, but at the same time, like what does that actually mean? What does that translate to in this situation?
It's just translates to strength. I mean, more than that, but sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we have to just think of it like that, right? We have to get away from these ideas of what's good or bad. That's all man-made, right? And I think that's where, with the astrology and assuming that things are going to be good because it's a good transit, they could be good personally. And like you said, that would be definitely something I would say. And I have said to clients, which is like, this is a seeding moment. It really is
Hmm.
like, especially like Jupiter, I feel like on a personal level is often about like the journey, whether it be like a journey on a project or anything. It's just like a learning moment.
The guru.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Always bringing lessons, bringing blessings. What I say is, blessings or blessings in disguise, right? Like the idea
Hmm.
that if the outcome is not necessarily what you wanted, then it really was the blessing in disguise. It might not necessarily, again, be the joyful celebratory moment. But what is also, again, striking about this Venus and Jupiter conjunction is, as we noted earlier, Mercury stationed direct. But this was also a Mercury that stationed direct opposing Pluto. One, that in of itself is already pretty intense because when you think about Pluto, it is not straightforward. It is not light, fluffy, easy. It is deep-rooted alchemy, transformation, abuse of power, even a corruption. But when you're looking at it also on the United States chart, it is right on the United States nodal axis. When you think about the events of this week,
Yeah,
in signaling a big turning point because it wasn't just the birth control, it wasn't just gay marriage on the line. We also had the the
yeah.
Trump-Russia Putin summit in Alaska that
Mhm.
didn't, end up with anything significant. But the reality is, Russia and the Saturn and Neptune cycles are very active. And so we are in
Yes.
a Saturn and Neptune cycle. So it's like, what does this actually mean? What is this seeding point? Putin talked about Trump maybe coming to Moscow next time to continue the conversation. Like, is this the start of a United States-Russia superpower alliance where we're really changing this world order? Like, what's happening here?
It sure seems like it. And then also with a lot of the talk of like land exchanges, like talk
Mm-hmm.
of giving Russia Alaska. It seems insane, right? But this is like what
Sarah
we
Palin.
I know.
Sarah Palin comes back so strong right now.
I know, but she wasn't totally wrong. Maybe you couldn't see Russia from her house, but you can see Russia from Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is
God.
pretty close. But yeah, I mean, all these things that would have seemed absurd a few years ago are all up for debate now. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we knew this was coming with the transits. Astrologers have been talking about this for many years. We're going through like a metamorphosis. This country is changing. And I was talking to a non-astrologer friend. I'm like, we're going through the things that we knew we were going to be going through. It's just a matter of
Mm-hmm.
how far it goes before we start. I don't know.
Hit the panic button.
Yeah, I mean,
Are we hitting the
well, it's
panic button?
yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things like, and I hate to be, I don't consider myself an astrology bro. And when I say that, I mean, the astrology bros that just love to talk about, Uranus and Gemini being about war and blah, 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 blah. And I don't
Mm,
necessarily think that that means, like, when I think of Uranus and Gemini, I don't think that means that we have to have war. But I think
hmm
what happens is it's kind of like think about what happens as a result of these wars. The country has advanced, the technology has advanced. We've advanced all these positive things about our society during Uranus and Gemini periods. And so I don't think that means that we have to have war, but something is going to force
hmm
us to have to
Bridge divide.
bridge a divide, create something's going to
Hmm
have to change, right? Just think about how like the country has changed the most after every major war we've had that we've been part of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I don't think again that we're going to necessarily have a war. I mean, we
Mm.
might. I mean, maybe we go to war with Mexico. That was the other thing. I don't know if you saw that
Mm. I did not
Rolling
see
Stone
that,
piece.
but
Yeah,
oh no,
there's
I didn't.
apparently
Oh,
talk that Trump is talking about wanting to bomb Mexico now.
great. Wow. It's so insane because the Uranus Gemini symbolism of the neighboring countries, right, is
Mhm.
just so visceral and loud.
Right.
I actually had this thought recently, given the bifurcation of where we are, because it actually seems dang near impossible for anyone to come to the center right now. Because anytime there's any kind of concession, it's, where people aren't satisfied with the response. Like there's a lot of South Node and Virgo energy in the air, right? And so
Yeah,
everyone's saying like you're not doing it right and you're doing this wrong. And I had literally this thought recently. I used to never understand how we could arrive at a place where, oh, war is the only solution out of this. I can see it. I can
yeah,
understand why why we arrive at that point because we, I really don't see a way to be diplomatic or, like how
yeah,
diplomacy can actually be helpful at this moment in time because clearly like people are there's a lot of there's a lot of mind games, there's a lot of politicking. It's just and again, now when you get people like on the right side, quote unquote, like whatever side that is for you, right? It's like, oh, are you actually on the right side because you genuinely care, or is it a function of a power grab and there's a vacuum and you now see this as
mhm,
an opportunity? Even when you think about Uranus and Gemini, right? Like they're in Venus and Jupiter this week, there is a lot about the congressional redistricting and drawing those lines. And when you think about Cancer, right, there's so much about, again, territory and
yeah,
like what's yours and this idea of protecting your safe space. I mean, speaking of protection, this is the same week that Trump announced the militarization or the intention to militarize like the DC police, even though he's backed off a little bit because that's a clear overreach. But when you think about serve and protect, that's a very Cancer idea as well, nationalism. And again,
mhm,
you're getting this hit right on the United States sun. The United States is also going through its Jupiter return, its Venus return, and again,
yeah,
all these things that you would think of as traditionally abundant and beautiful moments of opportunity. And you're getting alliances, you're getting support, you're getting expansion. And on some level, yes, it is, but it's not in the way that you would think is for all. It's only
yeah.
representing some of the, I guess, collective, not the entirety of the collective.
Totally. And I mean, it makes me think about 9/11
Hmm.
when Jupiter was in Cancer. And obviously, we're not associating Jupiter with 9/11, but the response to and there was that coming together, even people in my family who were generally liberal being like, kind of pro-war in that moment because it was
Hmm.
protection of like, we need to protect what's ours and da 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 da. And so it was like this moment that was like needed, but it also spawned a lot of the like xenophobia that is
Hmm.
alive and well today. Not that it didn't exist before that, but it really,
Yeah, it really lit that fuse
lit
up.
that up. And we're in that
Hmm.
moment again where something like that could happen. Not 9/11
Hmm.
per se, but I mean that racism based on that nationalism. I mean, we're already seeing it.
Yeah. And I know there are a lot of astrologers like, yeah, Jupiter in Cancer doesn't mean that there's a 9/11 every time. Situations are different. But like, here's the thing, Jupiter builds on each Jupiter cycle. There are lessons you learn from it and you take and you expand, right? And so I love that you've brought up the duality of it, right? Like the idea that, yeah, there was a lot more care and love and people coming together to support. But then there was also this uptick in overt patriotism and nationalism and racism that then induced or resulted in the Patriot Act, which was an overarching overreach of surveillance, targeted surveillance. And again, the astrology is correct in the context of what it's trying to do. If you think about it from the perspective of the United States Sibley Chart, it's the idea that this is the version of the United States that we are all in right now. It does not represent the land that predates this current narrative, this current, I guess, empire, if you will. So we have to view the perspective from the eyes of the colonizers, from the original, you know what I mean? The original intent to like, how do we protect this land that we worked so hard to get, even though how we might have gotten it might also be problematic, but it's a very this centric perspective, a really
Mm,
big US centric perspective that we are now trying to re-protect ourselves. We are under fire and it is representing, I think, a certain, again, political perspective where you think about who's really, who's really part of your community and who's like not someone you actually want to associate with in your community.
Yeah, totally. I mean, think about like Zionism. I think I'll speak from a personal perspective, growing up around Jewish communities in the United States. My mother's best friend was Jewish, my best friend was Jewish growing up. I went to more like weddings, funerals,
Hmm.
Jewish things, than I did anything else. And so I felt very connected to the Jewish community. Still do.
Hmm.
I always remember it being like, well, Zionism is very much tied to Israel, or that's our
Hmm.
crazy, that's our like racist, crazy uncle from Israel. He's
Hmm.
a Zionist. So that was always the way it was told to me by other Jewish
Hmm.
people. So to me, it was like the separate thing. I never thought of it as like they're being Zionists in this country. I thought you'd have to be over there to get that kind of mentality. And so to find
Hmm.
out that there's so many people, they're like, no, I'm
Hmm.
a Zionist. No, I'm okay with like the murder and slaughter of these people because they are below. Because I mean, that's what Zionism is. Like
Hmm.
it's it doesn't exist
Hmm.
without the racist component because it's
Hmm.
about like this is land belongs to us and you're trying to take it from us or you came after us or you're beneath us like
Hmm.
anyway, that's a tangent I could go on forever about, but there are a lot of people that like in this country that because we were told for so long like it's too complicated or it's not, you don't have a stake in it. But I think what a lot of people are realizing is that we do because we are so connected to Israel. We helped create Israel. Like
Hmm.
we created Israel because we helped create Israel because we didn't want to take all of those Jewish refugees from the Holocaust, right? Like after
Hmm.
people forget that after the Holocaust, people were horrified about what happened, but it didn't make anti-Semitism go away. So
Hmm.
people did not, welcome Jews into their country, which should
Hmm.
have happened. And instead, Israel was created because nobody wanted to take the refugees. So
Hmm.
anyway, these are all
Hmm.
things that like a lot of people are starting to understand about our history and our shared history with this, and
Hmm.
that certain people have certain points of views, and you have to kind of pick a side. Like, am I gonna associate with someone who now knowing all this information is okay with it? You know?
Hmm. Hmm.
So anyway, that's my little
Yeah.
rant.
No, I appreciate that so much because this is so tied into the fabric of what's happening right now, especially with the Uranus return of, the United States. And when you think about, as you said earlier, shifting alliances, right? Like, how is this going to look moving forward? Because you now have, I guess, during eclipse season, a whole lot of G7 nations starting to maybe acknowledge the state of Palestine, right? And that's a huge thing. And as much as, change is not coming maybe fast enough for a lot of people in the context of real lives at stake and real lives being martyred. When you think about the overarching history and the way that things have evolved, I I would have never thought we would have gone here, honestly, to like
Yeah,
have governments officially talk about it in such a manner. And, you know, as a plutonic person, uh, in my personal life, I can say the greatest changes have come not from like light suggestions by the universe, but when the universe really slams you over the head with something. And
yeah,
when you superimpose that to the mundane, it's horrific, of course. The United States has just navigated its Pluto return. So we're still navigating the aftermath of this sort of karmic or this very deep rooted reconciliation with history and the ugliness that, this shiny American dream veneer, quote unquote, promised. What I will also say about the Venus Jupiter conjunction, the same day that happened, which I think a lot of people might have missed also, was that Ceres stationed retrograde that day too. And
mm,
it was at that 16-degree mark. So it was effectively forming this T square with the United States Saturn. So when again you think about like the structures in place and limitations, and when you think about Ceres, which is again very tied to Cancer on some level, even though Ceres has a lot to do with Virgo and Taurus, there is a nurturing principle, there is a mothering principle, there is a lot about how we choose to stand up and protect, especially in Aries, like those who need our help. And so the idea that this went retrograde, it just kind of was interesting to see the moment this nurturing mother went retrograde, we get almost like the fear kind of coming out in like all these different ways. Like let's take on, this overreach. Let's control fertility. Let's control the police. Let's control everything. So it's a very Ceres and Aries type of overt leadership, like
Yeah.
very, very aggressive.
Very aggressive. And also I think it speaks to the Saturn Neptune conjunction,
Mm-hmm.
the rules, like who's in charge. Trump going into the cities, like I think that that's just the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
something that, he's doing what he does. He's testing something out, and then he's going to go back to the drawing board, or someone is, and then they're going to do a better version of it, right? But this
Mm-hmm.
idea of militarizing liberal cities, I think he's trying to work towards that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And Saturn is technically doesn't do great in Aries, right? But like,
Yeah.
what does that mean in this context? You know what I mean? Like, it's, when you think about an overt use of power, right? And I'm gonna force my way through something, even if I don't get what I want. Like, uh, especially with this squaring the United States Venus also, and the United States has a Venus and Jupiter conjunction, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever natal placement you have, whatever gets then mirrored in the sky, there is just an extra resonance with events that happen. And because Jupiter is the United States chart ruler, like there's a lot happening about, again, I guess when you think about the chart ruler, you think about it as like your avatar. Like there's a lot happening in terms of the United States avatar going on in the simulation right now. Like it's getting locked and
Yeah.
loaded, it's getting restructured. It is not going to be the same brand of the United States as, it once was for a lot of people. I'm convinced like we would have to really kind of pass our Uranus return
Mm.
before I think something really changes because it just doesn't seem like there, I mean, there are moments of good, politically speaking, I guess, but overall it's like pretty everything is kind of getting undone right now rather than
Yeah. And we're
yeah.
not like in the middle of it. We're still at the beginning of it, right? So,
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
think that like when you think of the Aries-ness of Saturn, Neptune, I think like the beginning of a new thing. So like on the positive side, I think about unionizing, and I think about people coming together, and
Mhm.
since this conjunction in Aries, there's been a lot of like new energy around organizing. And I think of Zoran like the energy behind that, and like a model for like
Mhm.
how things can be done. But then and then you think of like the negative side with Saturn, Neptune in Aries, that newness, right? You think of like
Mhm.
a teenager bulldozing through things. It's very much like how Doge was, right? Like we're just going to throw
Mhm.
everything out, and then when people start screaming, we'll put it back together. However, like
Mhm.
haphazardly, like it's been very much, and that's kind of the way Trump's been doing it, right? Like let's
Mhm.
just throw it out there, see how everybody reacts, and then we'll go from there.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of, we're gonna throw something out and see how it goes. Kim Davis this week, the
yeah,
heart of the conversation, the prompt for this week's conversation. I mean, I was not entirely surprised when I saw that, but I was thinking to myself, why? Oh God, of course it had to happen this week. And based on what we were saying, seeds planting is not a seed I'm looking to be planted
right.
because as also I'm not gay, but I would like to consider myself an ally and a defender of human rights. But interracial marriage happens to be on the same bill, and I am an interracial person myself, and I am with the partner who, is obviously going to be a different race from me. So it's kind of like, okay, like
Right. Like, what does
what are
this
we
mean
doing?
for you?
What is
Yeah.
happening? Can
Like,
I
are
can
we going there? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, at least in a couple years, of certain states, you cannot get married. You can't have an interracial marriage. I mean, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm just saying, again, like,
hmm
we're at the beginning of something that's going to be a bit ugly. We're not, it's ugly now, but.
Yes.
But
Well,
anyway, Kim Davis.
Kim Davis, I was gonna say, I mean, Kim Davis really came to prominence back like 10 years ago, 2015. She was kind of the reason why we got the Supreme Court ruling to allow gay marriage. Correct me if I'm wrong. She was a clerk who refused to give a marriage license to two gay men who came to get the license, right?
Yes.
And she was caught on video basically saying no, like it kind of blew up, it went viral. Let me pull up the oh my God, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation of
I say
this.
Obergefell, Oberg.
Obergefell versus Hodges. So sorry, and if people are going to roast me in the comments, I totally own it. I welcome your suggestions on how I can better say this. Um, but do you maybe want to sort of like for folks who might not be familiar, again,
Yeah.
that was for me a very high level summary, but laying out sort of what we're dealing with here and why it's kind of important for us to be looking at Kim Davis now.
Yeah, so Obergefell, I might be saying it wrong too. I'm pretty sure it's Obergefell. So sorry, yeah, anyone with that last name. But yeah, like we said, correct us in the comments if we said it wrong. So Obergefell versus Hodges is a landmark decision of the United States Supreme Court, which ruled that fundamental right to marry is guaranteed to same-sex couples by both the Due Process Clause and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And that was it was 10 years ago. It was June 26, 2015. The astrology of that time is interesting, especially when you look at now, because
Hmm.
Jupiter was in Cancer when many of the states were legalizing it. And then when we get to Jupiter in Leo is when it's legalized.
Oh my
That
God. I didn't notice this. I didn't realize that Jupiter and Venus were also conjunct at the time.
I didn't either. That's not something that popped out to me. I was so focused on that Mars and Cancer conjunct the sun.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But wow, I just got chills because obviously again, this is a Venus and Jupiter in Cancer week. This ruling came out during a Jupiter and Venus in Leo.
Yeah.
If that even doesn't scream already like, okay, cycles, like something is coming up cyclically speaking, that's like turning my wheels. That's like giving me goosebumps actually.
Yeah, it's not nothing. It's not anything that should be ignored, that's for sure. Like it's
Hmm.
pinging the chart.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you pointed out the Mars Cancer as well, because obviously we just came out of a Mars Cancer retrograde this time around in early this year, and so it kind of would make sense that when you're bringing up another Mars cycle, there would be resonance with something that happened at that time. And for her, that was actually also on her Jupiter. And of course, Kim has just come out of her Jupiter return. Her Jupiter was getting very, very, very stimulated,
Yeah.
Kim Davis. And Jupiter, when you think about religion, you think about faith, you think about belief, but Jupiter's also in detriment, in Gemini. So you're like, how strong are these beliefs really?
Yeah.
How focused is this? Or, like, is there a real POV here? Like, what's happening?
I
Yeah.
think she's getting paid a lot of money for this.
Mm.
With that Jupiter Venus conjunction in her second house,
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, she's got her Pluto and Mercury conjunct, and Uranus conjunct. I mean, that's just
Mm-hmm.
like must have had a really interesting childhood.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense. I feel like, if you grew up in a very fundamentalist or very controlling type of environment, especially when you think about like Pluto and Uranus and Mercury, like it would maybe be difficult to get freedom of speech in, right? And so it is
Yeah.
interesting to think about like, oh, what's her freedom of speech? What is her rights? But then maybe she didn't necessarily get that same freedom at home because there is a lot about, again, control and there's a lot about internalized shame, there's a lot about
Yeah.
guilt. And Pluto Uranus, I would say it can also kind of indicate, like, not to say abuse, but like some really deep rooted trauma, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
as a function of like a big like world event or something, right? Like because this is in the family house, it
Right.
could be that her family had to navigate some like really intense trauma that is now coming out in a very like abuser cycle type of way.
Yeah, and there's that. And then I also think about how Mercury is her is rules this chart,
Mm-hmm.
being her Gemini rising. And Mercury is kind of blinded a little bit by being under the beams, right? Like it's not, yes, it's in
Mm-hmm.
Virgo, so that's, it's exalted and it's home there, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit blinded, which makes me think about like being not being able to see a whole picture of something, or be seeing
Mm-hmm.
things fragmented maybe, or
Yeah. You're not getting the whole picture.
it is an exalted Mercury, but it is a little bit weak being under the
Mm-hmm.
beams.
It's also Mercury that's opposing Saturn, it's opposing Chiron. Like this is a Mercury that's under duress almost.
Yeah.
It also squares her moon. When you think about again, like verbal abuse, maybe, right? But also the fact that her, like, part of the reason why this court case happened, or why this, or part of it, right, was the viral video that came out when she was like yelling or she was being really aggressive. It kind of makes a lot of sense. And I think what's striking too is, she does have the South Node in Sagittarius. And when you think about the South Node in Sagittarius, then you think, okay, Jupiter is the ruler, and that's in her first house. And so, on some level, you're kind of thinking, okay, maybe it's the idea that we have to move out of a particular belief, a particular dogma, and be
Mhm.
a lot more curious about the other, about possibility, about how I could potentially be wrong, how my belief isn't the only thing here. I mean, she has her Lilith in Aquarius in the ninth house. So, when I think about a Lilith in Aquarius, and oh my God, that ruling happened with Ceres on that Lilith. So this is
Mm.
something, oh my God, do you think she like could be also gay secretly? I mean, like,
Yeah, I do. I
you
do.
know?
She's got that Neptune. First, she's got Venus and Scorpio. She's got Neptune and Mars conjunct,
Mm-hmm.
sextiling that Uranus, Pluto, Mercury too. So it's like that's like a drunk but powerful Mars, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Drunk and powerful, and
Yeah.
so drunk that we're now trying to repeal this
Yeah.
at the Supreme Court. And what I did want to say also is part of the reason why I was, aside from the astrology, right, saying that, oh, this is something that we should take more seriously, is because three of the justices still on the bench that were part of the four dissenters in 2015. It was 5-4. It wasn't unanimous. And I think even the Chief Justice, who gave a dissent at the time. So it was always shaky. It wasn't like
Yeah.
it was sealed, And then now, when you're thinking, okay, great, we've got three, the Supreme Court has moved more conservative. It it does not feel like the odds are tilting in our favor for,
No. And the woman, and I can't remember her name, I don't have it in front of me, but the woman who's kind of leading the charge,
oh,
I know, yeah,
Kristen something.
something, because she's kind of like behind the scenes leading this, which is, Kim's the face of it, but, she's has a lot of money behind this. And it's that woman, I know she is,
Kristen Wagner.
yeah, and she has some ambition to be a Supreme Court justice, which is terrifying because her views on things are really, really scary.
Yeah.
Um,
If someone please get me her birthday, Kristen Wagner, because the only thing I have online is 1972. She is also the president of the Alliance of Defending Freedom since 2022, which I think 2022 was also when Joe Biden basically protected existing marriage, right? Like they signed a separate act saying like if you are already married, this is not going to undo any marriages that have already happened. It's more the idea of any new marriages coming through. This would be a problem. But yes, she has been a president, CEO, and general counsel of the Alliance for Defending Freedom. And she was also the lead defense in the Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission. That, again, non-discrimination, making custom wedding cakes for the marriage of a gay couple based on the owner's religious beliefs. So this is the territory that we're playing in right now.
yep.
Good shit. I mean,
Yeah.
I always love to understand, like, oh, this person, like, why this person? This person seems significant. But then when you layer someone onto the United States chart, you're then kind of like, oh, I see. You're kind of like this agent. You're kind of this like figurehead or this someone that's actually going to whatchamacallit, like have a bigger impact. And so when I layer Kim's chart onto the United States Sibley chart, I mean, look at her freaking moon on the United States Mars.
Yeah.
All her Virgo on, I mean, one, Pluto, that Mercury Pluto Uranus conjunction you talked about, that's on the United States Lilith. And what's actually interesting about this current time right now is the South Node is also activating that Lilith and that
Mhm.
Virgo stellium in Kim's chart. So, when you think about Virgo, right? Like there's like a Madonna whore, there's like purity, there is control, there is this is how things should be done rather than what is
South
happening.
Node in Virgo is real active right now too, so it's emphasizing all of that.
Yeah. And again, like, she does have her Lilith, that same Lilith we talked about in that ninth house, but now this is on the United States South Node. So she does almost like she has a microphone with the Mercury to some of this real hate and real sort of disavowed self, because Lilith is about the disavowed self, right? And it's the part of us that we don't let come out. And so if we don't let this come out, we then kind of operate on the lower vibration of that to try to take what we can't have or take
Hmm.
control what we can't. So this is this is very interesting. She also has her Venus in Scorpio squaring the United States nodes,
She is a
which
lesbian in the closet.
yes,
Just like, what's his Laura Loomer outed Lindsey Graham this week too. Like,
yes.
duh. Like we all know that already.
The Venus and Jupiter of everything is so funny. But oh my God, this is the last thing I realized. Her nodes are
Mm.
on the United States Uranus. And I think
Oh,
that when I saw that, I immediately texted you. I'm like, you need to look at her
yeah.
chart on the Sibley chart because her activations are crazy. And that's why I'm thinking maybe not this year with the Uranus, right? Because Uranus still has to apply to that 8 degrees, but within the next couple. Absolutely. Like this is laying the groundwork. And
It's laying the groundwork.
when you think about a Uranus return for the United States, Uranus hitting Kim's North Node, or here's the thing, maybe I could take a more positive view from this, right? Maybe tides turn and
Maybe.
she kind of gets a big shock and realizes she can't like do this, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know. I would like to be hopeful, my Sag moon, but that somehow still doesn't necessarily fit that narrative. I don't know. But we're
Yeah.
hopeful.
And when Jupiter in Leo uh happens, that's going to be the Jupiter return for the um
Ober,
Obergefell
yeah.
v Hodges, and it will also come, the Jupiter will then get close to the north node of the USA chart. So I wonder what that.
Yeah, and the nodes are right, the nodes are gonna be switching, or the eclipses are already gonna be starting in Aquarius and Leo.
Yeah.
We have a particularly spicy full moon in Aquarius that will come up in Leo season next year. That has, I think, a moon Pluto at 7 degrees. Like it's boom, look at
Oh
that.
yeah, very end of July next year. Yep.
July 29th, Jupiter and Sun, Moon, Pluto on the nodes.
Yep.
And again, the 12-year cycle of the Supreme Court case.
Yeah.
And that will be Uranus. And oh, and look at that. Mars will be in Gemini at the time. There will be a Mars return happening also at the time. Venus will be in Virgo. That will be hitting Neptune and that Lilith as well. That will be hitting Kim Davis's Virgo energy. Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of is a
There it
little
is.
there it is. It's the idea that the alarm bells are sounding. If you're thinking about a moment where, oh, maybe things aren't as bad, and if you think it hasn't come to affect you or anything, like just recognize or at least be aware that go time is here. And
Yeah.
whatever action, whatever, if you're thinking about like, how can I best support my communities? How can I best support mutual aid? Because it is very clear that from an institutional perspective, it is going to get completely rocked. You
Yeah.
have more agency in helping and being the change that you want to be. And so, channeling the energy of Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, how do you support your communities? How do you stand up for your communities? How do you show up for them financially, emotionally? Like, how do you band together? These are all going to be really important things. And as William
Yeah.
said early in the episode, it can promote a deeper sense of unity and coming together. But it's the idea that you have to recognize that, like, we are in a moment that is going to warrant that. We can't just be sitting on our ass. We can't just be, oh, but I feel this and I'm just protecting myself. Like, it's the idea that we have to step up and protect all of us, all of
All
us,
of us.
all of
Yeah.
us, all of us. But I was going to say, was there anything else that you wanted to say about this whole situation? I mean, it's not necessarily the most pleasant of conversation, which is why we're going to be ending on a high. Um,
Yeah.
with the other side of Venus and Jupiter in Cancer. But any last thoughts about this before we move on?
Just that I want to echo what you said about coming together. And I think that, you see a lot of discourse online about they came for us this year, now they're coming for you. That's a lot of the leftists like fighting
Hmm.
infighting. But what's going to happen? What I think we're seeing happen is that basically, like if you watch or look at any of the ads for like ICE, like coming to join ICE, like that is very revealing about where our country is right now. Where
Yeah.
because it's basically like if you don't like the way this country has turned out for you as a straight white person, join ICE and you can do something about it. That is
Hmm.
how it's being advertised. And so I think unless you're like, even if you are a straight white man, pretty much that you're the only one that's going to be saved. Like we're all being targeted here. So we have to work together, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I do think that the Jupiter and Cancer, what we will see, because again, it's a seeding moment, Jupiter, Venus, um, I do think you'll see less infighting and more like higher level focus energy and less like
Hmm.
nitpicky crap. Um,
I
but
hope
you also
so.
people need to stay offline and meet in person more to get away from that like lost in the details BS. But yeah.
Hmm. Just realized that at this moment of this particular full moon, the nodes are going to switch over, right, officially into it's like
Mm,
at the tail end. So very similar to like the Mars at 29 degrees Virgo, where everyone kind of like had that extra level of anxiety, or when the nodes first moved into Virgo. Like I kind of feel like there would be a similar, especially when we're about to switch signs, right? Like there's just this buildup or emphasis of energy that could quite honestly be a little more at that moment. But again, hoping for the best always. I wanted to end the episode, LOL, on a much lighter note. Because obviously, actually, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna leave the US chart up and I'm gonna drop Taylor in the second because again, this is like a very like all these things happening in America right now is a like I don't know, because again of the Venus and Jupiter conjunction on the United States Cancer, like it just feels like everything born right now is like very American pop star, American love story, like American shit, right? All up in here.
yeah.
And so Taylor Swift, when you look at her chart, the Jupiter, the moon, like it makes sense why she just has such a stranglehold on the collective, just because like it just works with her chart. Her chart and the United States Sibley chart is like so they go hand in hand,
Yeah.
basically. But of course, Venus and Jupiter, as we said earlier, can invite some goodness into the mix. And so this week we obviously got Taylor Swift's TS12 Life of a Showgirl announcement on her boyfriend Travis Kelce's podcast, which, if you're interested, I have done a deeper conversation just specifically about Taylor Swift that I have up on my YouTube channel. So go check that out. But when you see this moment here, Jupiter Venus on her Chiron on the United States Sun, this album is going to be huge. You don't need to be an astrologer to say that, but you see this
Right.
here and you're like, "Oof." So we were talking about this during the podcast, the New Heights podcast. You and I were DMing back and forth
Mhm.
back about potential rising signs, and this is obviously like a big source of contention in the community. Scorpio rising, Capricorn rising, Pisces rising. Where having now watched the podcast, do you have an update to your preference for rising sign for Taylor?
Yeah. I started out early on thinking she was a Capricorn rising before I had really looked at like transits and stuff. And then I came
Hmm.
to the think, well, no, she's got to be a Scorpio rising or at least a water rising. And then it was, I think, Kepler, like students at Kepler as like a group project, they like rectified her chart. And so even though it's
Yes.
not, so that's what, and it just, the Pisces, when I first heard the Pisces rising, I was like, what? But it makes so much sense now, and I feel like she's got to be a Pisces rising. I just feel strongly
Hmm.
about that.
Hmm.
It just makes a
Hmm.
lot of sense.
Yeah, I was Team Scorpio Rising before, for sure. And as I said over and over again, like the lyrics to Midnight's, like Anti-Hero, all these things, like I was like, God, that's such a Scorpio album and Reputation, of course. But when you think about it, it does make sense. Like Pisces and water, like if you think about it, if she's a Pisces rising or a Scorpio rising, she's also still ruled by like Mars in Scorpio or Jupiter in Cancer. So she
Right.
is like still a very watery type of person.
Yeah.
And she does have a Cap stellium. So it does cover that Capricorn terrain of, Capricorn rising. But when you see her, when she's talking, there was just it was not it's not how I would imagine a Capricorn rising having a conversation,
Right.
especially one that would have all those planets in her first house.
Yeah. She wouldn't be so easily crying like that. Capricorn rising's not going to do that.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I will say Ariana Grande is a
oh,
Capricorn rising and Cancer, and
oh, and she's
she
pretty gushy when she does interviews and stuff.
yes, but she does have a Saturn in Pisces, so that would make
Okay.
sense, I
That makes
think.
sense. Okay.
Because yeah, there's like that water fluidity. But again, it is still different, her and Ariana. Like I was trying to articulate this. Like, yes, I know that they are similar potentially, but they also appear very different. And
Mhm.
both are hard workers, obviously, but again, Taylor has the Cap stellium, so it doesn't have to
Yeah.
mean that she's a Capricorn itself, but she does transform a lot. She creates these realms, like the Evermore folklore era, and then like now
Mhm.
she's coming on to a different era. Like there's very distinct eras, whereas, it's not maybe necessarily the same. Ariana has, I mean, Black Sun era, Wicked era, but like that's a whole different thing also versus the storytelling that what Taylor does.
Right, the world building that she does. She kind of does world building that like people do in like television shows, right? Like there's everything is very thought of.
Mm-hmm.
Something I found interesting about when she announced the name of the album being The Life of a Showgirl,
Mm-hmm.
and then there were a lot of funny memes that came out after that. I don't know if you saw, there were a lot of like Lisa Kudrow from the comeback, like
Yes.
talking about Life of Showgirl. And what I find interesting about that, and it also reinforced something that I think I messaged you, which is like there's this rumor that and it would make total sense that Taylor
Mm-hmm.
Swift is going to do a Vegas residency instead of a
Mm-hmm.
tour, which would
Mm-hmm.
make perfect sense for the Life of a Showgirl to be a Vegas residency.
Mm-hmm.
And when Jupiter goes into Leo, that's also when the comeback is gonna come back. I think Lisa Kudrow has a bunch of Leo stuff. So I'm like, when the comeback comes back, that's also
Mm-hmm.
gonna be whenever this Vegas residency is gonna be very Jupiter and Leo.
Mm-hmm.
The chart for Las Vegas has a Leo rising chart.
Oh, I
So
didn't know that. That's
yeah.
good intel. That makes a
So
lot of
I
sense.
isn't that it makes sense? So I feel
Yes.
like I mean, is everywhere Taylor Swift goes, like the economy of that area just does better. So I think that Vegas
Mm-hmm.
is going to get a redo, a
Resurgence.
resurgence because of her.
Mm-hmm.
And with this idea of the life of a showgirl, I wouldn't even be surprised because that's Leo that because I don't know if you've ever been to Vegas before. Have you been to Vegas?
I haven't.
You haven't.
I'm going in October for the first time
Okay.
this year for a bachelorette. I made it.
Okay.
34. I finally made it to
I
Vegas.
think I was about 34, 35 by the time I finally went to Vegas for the first time. And The parts of Vegas I love about it are those old school things. Like I remember, like we go to like this old school steakhouse and it has this kind of like Vegas mobster vibe about it. I
Mm-hmm.
like all that old school stuff, and a lot of Vegas has been kind of Disneyfied, and I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if this idea of old Vegas, and which is very much an American thing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Vegas is very American. I just feel like Vegas is going to get this kind of like resurgence. And it might even be like a hearkening to like previous times when Vegas had a much more, I almost want to say classy. Classy is not the right word, but old Vegas has a vibe. New Vegas feels like a shopping center.
Trashy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I can't comment because I've never been, but I can only speculate and
Yeah.
hypothesize. I mean, I do still want to make it to like my dream. LOL, it's very low-hanging fruit dream. But I would really love to make it out for March Madness one year to hang out in the pools and just like sports bet aggressively on March Madness while tanning. Like that would be
That sounds fun.
that's such a high for me, honestly, and I'm like waiting to still make that happen. So I'm hoping this Vegas trip goes well this year. Are you con like would you consider yourself a Swiftie? Like, was this something that you are eagerly like awaiting as well?
I sometimes I think I might be. I don't know that I would consider myself a Swiftie. I like a lot of her music. I think we were talking about how both of us, at least for me, like I didn't really take her that seriously until around when Midnight's came out, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
and the album itself was really good, and so I paid attention to her more after that. I did not like
Mm-hmm.
Tortured Poets very much, so I'm very selective.
Same,
I
same,
I
same.
like the folklore, Evermore stuff, and I like her like real pop stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
1989, but the where she wants to come off like seeming smart with all the words and Torture Poets, that kind of turned me off. But so in that sense,
Mm.
I can't be a Swiftie because I don't like everything she does.
That is fair. I mean, she does have the Mercury, Neptune, and the Jupiter moon. So I do think that she is always going to speak in poetry. Like that's just like a default,
Yeah.
and always thinking about like how to make her words better. And I'm like almost surprised there was no Virgo, like explicit Virgo, but it kind of, I mean, her lot of fortune in theory would be then Virgo, right? So the
Mhm.
detail, the wordsmithing, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, again, I thought it was important to at least like highlight, you know, all these events that have come out this week specifically. Also because, I keep track of stuff, but then when I go back in time, I'm like, okay, when did that happen again? And then like I have to go back in my research. But this to me feels like, okay, this is the week. This is the Venus and Jupiter seeding week. And all of these things have happened. It's now
Yeah.
very interesting to see how these things are going to all naturally play out. It's interesting too. Travis Kelce came out with a GQ spread this week as well,
Oh,
with the cover as America's Sweetheart or America's whatever. And again, the resonance with the Sibley chart, like Taylor's influence, this
yeah.
happening this week. There is a birth of something happening, a new romance, a new dynasty, a new whatever. Marie and I were talking
Hmm.
about this, like maybe this is forming a new family dynasty in
Oh yeah.
the United States because Jupiter, like the United States loves a family dynasty. We don't really have Kennedys. I mean, we do, but it's more of lore versus current activation. And
Yeah,
so,
we don't have we need some newer version of that. Yeah.
yeah, I almost wonder down the line they will get involved in politics, both Taylor and Travis. Even, you know what I mean? The Midwest, especially type of
Mhm.
energy because they are looking for a home in Ohio. Like they're very entrenched with their families. Like it, I don't know. It just kind of seems in 12 years, so much can happen, right? Like 12 to 12-year career was basically Taylor's Eras tour all engulfed in one thing. And then now a whole other era has begun. On some level too, like I do think she represents a type of capitalism that I don't particularly like in my
Yeah.
creative artists in terms of
Same.
you know, four same things, and then we're bundling it for a certain price to help her get her master. Like, I
It's
get
so
it.
unnecessary.
I get it. I had to ask my partner yesterday, like, just to be very clear, this is something that happens to everyone in the music industry. Correct. Like everyone wants their masters. Like I assume that's the highest goal that you have as a musician. And it
Yeah.
was just kind of weird to hear her talk about how like in the interview, like not everyone has the same goals. Like some people will sell their masters. I'm like, girl, some people sell their masters because they can't afford to keep their masters. Like,
Yeah.
no.
She's so powerful and so rich. Most people can't come anywhere close to that. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's about power. And
Hmm.
most people don't have anywhere near that kind of power.
Hmm.
But,
Hmm.
she has that very dignified chart that, she just gets what she wants. She's lucky and um, her life is like a fairy tale. I say.
Yeah. Again, not to say that there's no hard work involved, right? Like this is
Yeah.
also, it goes back to when people talk about, oh, are you privileged or whatever? It's just acknowledge your privilege, acknowledge your stuff. And I think that can be the highest vibration of Cancer, right? At the end of the day, like Cancer can be so much about my emotions, my things, my emotional subjectivity. But at the highest vibration, it is about all of us. And
Yeah.
so that's a note I kind of want to leave on today. Do you have any lingering thoughts on Venus and Jupiter this week? What else we can expect? I mean, oh my God, there's like so much,
I
obviously.
know it's so much. Well, I think that, like coming back to the beginning about Venus and Jupiter, on a mundane level, it doesn't always look the way we want it to look. But on a personal level, it's really exciting. Like the amount of people that are probably have so many like new seeds that started this week. I know I was very intentional about starting some new things that I really want to see grow and turn
Mm-hmm.
into something. And so I think that, on a collective level, when things are on fire, we just have to come together and we focus on our individual things that we can grow and then together as a community and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that so much. Well, thank you, William, so much for coming on the pod, our
Yeah.
brand new segment, if you will. How can people find you? How best can they reach out to you? And if is there anything new that you're offering as part of the seeding?
So you can find me. Well, I'm on Instagram. William Stanley Holloway is just my whole name is my Instagram handle. My website is williamhollowayastrology.com, where you can book readings. I have my podcast Orbitals that I'm always working on. I have a new podcast that I just recorded this week that's going to be a completely different thing.
Oh, I
I'm
love
hoping to put
that.
out in the next week. Yeah, so I will have two podcasts.
We
Yeah,
love that. We
yeah.
love that. More podcasts, Uranus and Gemini life. Let's go. Well, again, thank you so much for coming
Thanks for
on.
having me.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button, share with your Astro besties, and I will be back with probably another transit breakdown episode coming soon. So stay tuned, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Take care, everyone. Bye.